So thank you for the introduction. My name is Lev Pachmanov, and today we are going to talk about physical sidechain attacks on PCs. This talk summarizes a bunch of papers, which are joint work with Daniel Genkin, Itamar Pipman, Adi Shamir, and Eran Tomer. So if you have a device, and this device has a secret inside it, and for the purpose of this talk, I'm going to assume that this device runs a perfect software, and I can get the secret out of it just by using suitably bad input. So what can we do? We can try mounting a side-channel attack and see what we can find. So for example, we can try to measure the device's electromagnetic emanation or probe the device and see what's inside it. We can try measuring the device's power consumption or see if the device has some optical emanation. Or we can go and look for some architectural vulnerabilities such as cache attacks. In today's talk, I'm going to show you that we can use the noise emitted by your computer or the chassis potential, namely the box that holds your PC in one piece, in order to extract secret keys from your laptop. So let me start by going over the traditional methodology for mounting side-channel attacks. And the first step is to grab, borrow, or steal the device. We need to get our hands on the device itself. Then we're going to analyze the device's code in order to find some side-channel vulnerability. For example, here, this device first executes a squaring operation, and then only if the key bit is 1, then it does multiplication. The next step is to record the ammunition using some high bandwidth equipment and obtain some traces. Then we're going to analyze these traces to find the relation between the traces and the squaring and multiplication operations. Then we're going to deduce the key just by following this sequence, since if squaring operation was followed by multiplication operation, then the key bit is 1. And if a squaring operation was followed by another squaring operation, then the key bit is 0. So this works. It works nicely for smart cards and other small devices such as FPGAs, but for PCs it's actually pretty hard. And the reason it's hard boils down to 3 concrete problems. The first problem is the problem of scenario. As opposed to smart cards, which are given to the attacker in form of SIM cards or TV subscription cards, laptops are not given to the attacker. If I got access to a laptop, I need to be very fast and very unsuspicious. The second problem is the problem of speed. Typical PCs run at several gigahertz CPU. And in order to mount a clock rate attack in such speeds, I need this very big and very bulky equipment. I need this big oscilloscope, which costs around $100,000 and weighs around 15 kilograms. This is opposed to a smart card, which runs at around 100 megahertz and costs around, to mount such an attack, I need a scope which costs around $1,000 and weighs around 1 kilogram. The third problem is the problem of complexity. Smart cards are made with, has only one chip, which does decryption when we ask it. And as opposed to that, we have this big motherboard with thousands of individual components and the billions of transistors. And on top of that, we have the operating system, which often executes tasks in parallel. So despite these 3 problems, I hope to convince you today that side-channel attacks on PCs can be mounted, and actually can be mounted easily and pretty cheaply. So let me start by going over our results. We demonstrated classical side-channel attacks, side channels for PCs, such as power consumption, electromagnetic emanation, and then we introduced 2 new channels for attacking PCs, which are the ground potential and the acoustic channel. Then we exploited these channels using novel low bandwidth techniques. We developed 2 new attacks, an adaptive chosen ciphertext attack, which requires only 50 kilohertz of bandwidth. This is 6 orders of magnitude lower than the PC execution speed. The next attack we developed is a non-adaptive chosen ciphertext. It requires 1.5 megahertz of bandwidth, but it's much, much faster. Then we demonstrated our attacks on the common cryptographic software, namely GnuPG of various versions, and these are the CV numbers. So this attack works, and they work very good. They work for both RSA and LGMR of various implementations. And then we worked with GnuPG developers to mitigate these attacks. These attacks are applicable to various laptops makes and models. We didn't modify the laptops before attacking them. So let me start by showing you the chassis potential channel. So electrical engineers try to minimize the stray currents and fields emitted by the devices. And in order to do that, they use bypass capacitors and RF shields, which take stray electrons and photons and dump them to the ground, which they consider the trash can. This is mainly done for EMC compliance, since we don't want the nearby devices adversely affecting on each other. And for some extent, for side channel resistance. So as cryptographers, it makes sense for us to go dumpster diving and see if we can find some useful signals in there. So here's the laptop, and it's grounded. It's grounded to its power adapter. So theoretically, the potential of the laptop's ground versus the main Earth's ground should be 0. But in practice, these wires are not ideal, so some potential builds up between the laptop ground and the main Earth's ground. So what we have here is a computation which will affect the currents in the EM field inside our device, which then is going to be dumped to the device's ground, which is connected to the conductive chassis of the laptop. So here is the laptop, and it's really cool and modern, so it's chassis made of aluminum. Then this laptop connected to the ground. What we're going to do is to connect this measurement wire to the conductive chassis of the laptop, then connect its other side to our measurement equipment, which is also connected to the main Earth ground. Then some potential is going to come up to the laptop, where it becomes correlated with the secret key. Then this information travels through our measurement wire to our measurement equipment, which compares it to the main Earth ground, analyze it, and extract the key. So let's see what we can pick up. And for this, I brought some equipment with me today. So here's the laptop. I'm not sure what you can see. So everything I brought here with me is mirrored back on the screen. So here is this laptop. And although it's leaked pretty well, it's not so cool and not so modern. So it's a conductive chassis covered with plastics. And it's not so clear how can we connect a probe. But if you look closely on the left side of the laptop, you will see this heating exhaust. And through this heating exhaust, we can see these cooling fins, which are made of aluminum and highly conductive. Then to this, we're connecting a probe, which is connected to the high impedance buffer. This high impedance buffer is here in order to isolate the measured laptop from a measurement equipment. This is done since we don't want the small potential from the laptop dumped to the ground to our measurement equipment. Then we connect it to this slightly modified DVT tuner. This is usually used to capture digital television. And this is connected to a measuring laptop, which is going to analyze the signal. So let me show what we can pick up. Here is a spectrogram. And the spectrogram is a way to visualize a signal of leakage signal. So the vertical axis is the time axis. You see it goes up. And the horizontal axis is the frequency axis. So let me ask my computer to do some operations for us. Just a second. So what I forgot to mention is that intensity represented with this yellow color. So at this point of time, and at this frequency, we had a particularly strong signal. So what we see here is that we have a few distinctive areas. So for example, this area looks like this area, and this area looks like this area. So if I were to tell you that during this time, my computer was doing add operation, and during this time, my computer was doing multiplication operation, then immediately, just by observing the chassis potential of my laptop, you could tell that during this time, my computer was doing add operations, and during this time, my computer was doing multiplication operations. So let me show a better recording I made at the lab. Here we can see more operations. We can distinguish between floating point operations, add operations, memory access operations, and so on and so on. So there's clearly some information to be measured here, but cryptographic code doesn't behave this way. It doesn't do the same operation for 1 whole second. So let me show you how a leakage of RSA looks like. And in order to do that, I need to recap some notation. RSA is a public key crypto system. The secret key consists of two primes P and Q, and a private exponent D. And the public key N, which equals to P times Q, and a public exponent E. In order to encrypt a message M, we're going to compute M to the E modulo N, and call it C, the ciphertext. In order to decrypt this ciphertext, I need to compute C to the D modulo N, and by correctness of RSA, I get that this M equals to the M I encrypted. So this works, but modern implementations for RSA does this by another way. What they're doing is to compute C to the dp modulo P and call it MP, then compute C to the dq modulo Q and call it MQ, and then combine the MP and MQ using the Chinese remainder theorem. So the first look, this seems like this implementation is worse than this implementation, since this one has 2 modular exponentiation and this one has only 1. But since P and Q are 2 times smaller than N, we get a 4 times speedup. So modern implementation of RSA do it this way. So let's take a look on how RSA leakage look like. And I asked my computer to do 2 RSA decryptions. So the first thing we can see here is that we have these 2 green areas and this black area here in the middle. The reason for that is that I asked my computer to do some sleep between these 2 decryptions. So we can clearly distinguish between when my computer was decrypting and when my computer was idle just by observing the chassis potential of my laptop. The next thing we can see here is that in the middle of each decryption we have this slight shift of frequency. This slight shift marked with these big yellow arrows. The reason that this shift is here is because my RSA implementation does it using the COT implementation. The first part corresponds to the modulo P modular exponentiation, and the second part corresponds to modulo Q exponentiation. And once again, modulo P and modulo Q. So if I were not to tell you that my implementation does it, implements RSA using the COT implementation, you could immediately tell it just by observing my chassis potential. The next thing we can see here is that this shift is at the first decryption is slightly to the left, while in the second decryption this shift is slightly to the right. The reason for that is that in the first decryption I asked my computer to decrypt the ciphertext with the first key, while in the second one I asked my computer to decrypt the same ciphertext but with another key. So we can clearly distinguish between when I was using my first key and when I was using the second key. But moreover, I can distinguish between different primes. Since if I were to take the prime P from this key and the prime Q from this key and decrypt something with it, and then show you the leakage of the chassis potential of my laptop, you could immediately tell that, since the first part will look like this and the second part will look like this. So there's clearly some information leaking about our secrets. But it's not clear how from this we can go on and extract the secret key. So let me show you how we can go on and extract the secret key actually. And in order to do that, I need to show you how GnuPG does modular exponentiation. GnuPG used to use this algorithm in order to do modular exponentiation. This algorithm called square and always multiply. It takes 3 arguments C, D, and P and computes C to the D modulo P. This code consists of 1 main loop, and the main invariant of this loop is that at this point M equals to C to the dn to the I plus 1 modulo P. I'm going to prove it that this variant is true, and from this we're going to deduce that at the end, after all the iteration of this loop has happened, M equals to C to the dn through d1 modulo P, so M equals to C to the D modulo P. So the first thing this algorithm does is compute m equals m squared. Squaring is multiplying the exponent by 2, and multiplying by 2 in a binary representation is adding 0 at the end. So we have here that m equals to c to the dn to the I plus 1 with 0 at the end. Then it computes t equals m times c. So t equals to c to the dn to the I plus 1 with 1 at the end. And here, at this point, m is either replaced with the value of t if the current bit of d is 1, or remains the same if the current bit of d is 0. So in other case, we have that at this point, m equals to c to the dn to the I modulo p. And after running all the iterations of this loop, m is going to be equal to c to the dn to the d1 modulo p, which is c to the d modulo p. So this works, but if you notice, there's some quirk in this code. And from some reason, GnuPG computes t to be equals m times c, but it then discards it if the value of the current bit of d is 0. So the more reasonable implementation for this is to put this multiplication inside the if statement. So why did GnuPG developers did it this way? The reason for this is that the GnuPG developers were aware of the risk of side channels. And if we put this multiplication inside the if statement, and one could measure the sequence of the squaring and the multiplication, he will be able to deduce the key. Since if squaring operation was followed by multiplication operation, then the key bit is 1. And if a squaring operation was followed by another squaring operation, then the key bit is 0. So it seems like there is no key-dependent operations in here. And here, the sequence of the squaring and the multiplication, you just square and they multiply, square and they multiply, and so on and so on. But as an attacker, we need to find something which depends on the secret key. So what can we do? The main observation about this code is that at this point of time, m depends both on the current bit of d and our ciphertext c, which we control. Then the next observation is that this value, which depends on the current bit of d in our ciphertext c, in the next iteration of the main loop, goes directly to the squaring operation. So what we're going to do? We're going to craft a ciphertext c, which will affect the squaring operation. And the way that it's going to affect the squaring operation is if the current bit of d is 1, then t equals to m times c, and m replaced with t. So we somehow affected the squaring operation. And if the current bit of d is 0, then the value of t is discarded. We didn't affect the squaring operation. And then the squaring operation is not going to be affected. Then we're going to measure if either we affected the squaring operation or not. And doing this for all the bits of d, we're going to deduce the secret d. But we still have the problem of speed. The CPU runs at around 2 GHz, while we measure it only 1.5 MHz. So we cannot observe subtle changes inside the squaring operation. What we need is a big, drastic change inside the squaring operation in order to observe it. So in order to do that, we developed a new technique, which we call liquid self-amplification. And what we're going to do is to abuse the algorithm's own code, which we didn't write and we don't control, in order to amplify their own leakage. And the way we're going to do this is by crafting a suitable ciphertext, which is going to affect the innermost loop of the squaring operation. But once again, we cannot observe subtle changes inside the innermost loop. But the nice thing about the innermost loop is that they're repeated over and over and over again. And this small subtle change creates a big overall change. And this is something we can observe and can measure. So in order to show you how to do liquid self-amplification on this squaring operation, I need to dive a little bit deeper and show you how GnuPG implements the squaring operation. So the way that GnuPG implements squaring operation is using this Karatsuba algorithm. I'm not going to bother you with all the details, but the important thing is that the Karatsuba algorithm is a recursive algorithm. And as in good recursion, it has a base case, which in our case is the basic squaring routine. And basic squaring routine is the algorithm you all can think about. it takes the big numbers x, divided to words, and then for each word of x, it multiplies it by entire x. And put the result in some accumulator and continues to the next word. But this is done for all the words of x with one exception. If GnuPG notices that the current word of x is 0, then it knows that there is no point to compute this whole multiplication, since the result is going to be 0 anyway. So it sets the accumulator to be 0, it continues to the next word of x. I claim that this is the main sidechain vulnerability inside GnuPG's code. And now I'm going to show you how to exploit it. So what we're going to do, we're going to set this ciphertext to be -1 modulo p. Then at this point of time, m is going to be always equal to 1. And let me prove that to you. At the beginning, m equals to 1, so 1 squared is 1. Then at this point, t is equals to m times c, so 1 times -1 is -1. And then m is either replaced with the value of t, which is -1, or remains the same, which is 1. So after squaring, either 1 or -1 is equals to 1. So at this point of time, m always equals to 1. So at this point of time, we have that if the current bit of d is 1, then m is -1. And if the current bit of d is 0, then m is 1. So what is -1 modulo p? -1 modulo p is p minus 1. And in binary representation, p is randomly generated prime. So p minus 1 is going to have this random bit structure with 0 at the end. And if the bit is 0, then m equals to 1. So 1 modulo p is 1. So, and the binary representation of 1 is a bunch of 0 words and then 1. So this either plus or -1 at this point goes to the squaring operation, and then it comes to be the input of the Karatsuba algorithm. So once again, I'm not going to bother you with the exact details of the recursion, but the important thing is that this recursion preserves the form of if m had a lot of 0 words, then the input to the squaring routine is going to have a lot of 0 words. And if m had randomly bit structure, then the input of basic squaring routine is going to have random bit structure. So this either a lot of zeros or random structure travels to the basic squaring routine, reaches our favorite if. So at this point of time, if the current bit of d is 0, then m is 1. So the input of the squaring routine is 1, which travels through our squaring operation and reaches this if. And so since 1 has a lot of 0 limbs, then this if is mostly taken. And on the contrary, if the current bit of d is 1, then m has a lot of random bit structure, and then this if is not going to be taken, since random numbers not tend to have a lot of 0 words. So this if happened 7 times per call to basic squaring routine, and basic squaring routine is called 27 times per call to Karatsuba squaring routine. So in total, we have 189 times that this if is either taken or not taken per bit of d. And this is 0.2 seconds of measurement. And this is something we can observe. It can be measured. So our attack relies on the fact that we can set the ciphertext C to be -1 modulo p. And for RSA, we don't know p. So we can't set the ciphertext to be p minus 1 directly. But what we can do is to set it to be n minus 1. And since n equals to p times q, n minus 1 modulo p, well, n cancels, and we're left with -1 modulo p. For Elgamal, it's easier, since p is part of the public key. So we can set the ciphertext to be directly p minus 1. And let me summarize our attack. So we attack the squaring and always multiply algorithm with non-adaptive chosen ciphertext. We need only one ciphertext, this -1 modulo p. It takes only 3 seconds of measurement to extract the full secret key, and it takes 2 megahertz of bandwidth. And it works both on LGAMAR and RSA. But the problem with this attack is that a more modern implementation of RSA doesn't do the squaring and always multiply algorithm. The way that they're doing it is called sliding or fixed window exponentiation. So we recently published another attack which targets these algorithms, and this is also a non-adaptive chosen ciphertext attack. This time it requires 2 to the W minus 1. For our case, it usually 8 or 16 ciphertext, depends on the size of the window. It takes around 30 seconds of measurement to extract the secret key, and it also requires 2 megahertz of bandwidth. And once again, it works both on LGAMAR and RSA. Another attack we demonstrated is also on targeting the algorithm of square and always multiply. But this time, this is an adaptive chosen ciphertext attack. It requires a key size divided by 4. It's around 1,000 ciphertexts in case of RSA. And in order to decrypt so many ciphertexts, it takes around 1 hour. But this time, it takes only 50 kilohertz of measurement. So with so little bandwidth, it can be mounted with practically anything. For example, using the acoustic channel. And I hope to show you today that we can extract the secret key just using the noise emitted by your computer. So at this point, one might wonder how I make the target computer to decrypt ciphertext that I specifically crafted and has these weird mathematical properties. And one scenario for this is the Enigmail plugin. Enigmail plugin is a plugin for the open source mail client called Thunderbird. And the purpose of Enigmail in its life is to allow you to send encrypted and receive send the encrypted mails and receive the encrypted mails with this nice user interface. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this spam mail with a lot of cats picture inside. And luckily it will have this mathematical structure of -1 modulo p. Then we're going to send it to our target backdated. What is going to happen is that our target will receive this mail, and in order to show you this pop-up that notifies you that you have a new mail, it's going to decrypt it. And after decrypting it, it will see that it is a spam mail, and it's going to be moved to your spam folder. And since it's backdated, it's not going to be moved to your spam folder only, it's going to be moved to the end of your spam folder. And I'm not sure how many of you checked the end of your spam folder recently, but someone might be attacking you right now. So let me show you this attack in practice. Let's get the spectrogram running once again. This is here. So now I will ask the computer to do some decryptions for us. And as you can see immediately, this particularly strong frequency appears here in the middle. And around it, we have this slightly darker, but still brighter than the background, cloud structure. This spectral signature looks a lot like the spectral signature of radio station broadcasting at this frequency. And the music it broadcasts, or in our case, the secret key, is frequency modulated around it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask my computer to do the inverse, to apply the inverse modulation, practically the frequency demodulation. This is what your radio does when you tune it to your favorite station. And from this, we're going to see the secret key. So let's wait while my computer does it. So let me share my key with you, and hopefully some of you will write it down and handle some of my work while I travel in Finland. So here is my secret key. So we have this graph here, and then we have this peaks which corresponds to bit of 1, and this dips which corresponds to bit of 0. So we have this 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, and so on and so on. The entire key is here. You can read it and write it down. Here it is. So I hope you had time to write it down. Now, Well, at this point, one might argue that if you have a laptop with a secret key inside it, you don't allow strange people to connect weird wires to it. So I agree with you. And let me start by disconnecting this wire. So you may see that immediately the signal disappears. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this this wire in my hand, and with the other hand I'm going to touch the computer, some metal part of the computer, and you see that the signal comes right back. So this is nice, but the problem with this setup is that it requires both of my hands, and I can't give the rest of the talk like that. So in order to do that, to overcome that, I brought this very carefully calibrated human tissue simulator recommended by Tommy, namely this thin and lanky. And now I'm going to stick this probe here inside it. And we're going to place it here and stick it inside the computer. And you see the signal is here. So we can go and extract the secret key once again, but we don't have time for that, so let's go on. So here is the touch demo as I demonstrated to you. So at this point, one may argue that if you have a secret laptop with secrets inside it, you're going to put it in some sealed room, and outside this room you're going to place some big guards. And these guards will have even bigger guns. But for that, I claim that sometimes the chassis of the laptop is bigger than the laptop itself. And sometimes even bigger than the room it's inside. So, the reason I claim that is because a lot of us connect some wires to our laptop. And since we have good cables with, which doesn't lose signal, we use these shielded wires. And the nice thing about shielding is that it goes through this cable and is connected to the ground of the connector at both sides. And this ground connected to the laptop chassis. So what I'm going to do is to connect a probe to the shielding on the other side of the laptop. Then I'm going to connect it once again to a measurement equipment, which is connected to the main earth ground. Then I'm going to measure the chassis potential at the far end of the shielding of this cable and extract the secret key. So this works, and this works even if there's no data transmitted on the port, or even if the data is encrypted. The important thing is that this cable is present, and it's connected to the laptop chassis. So here is a setup we demonstrated at the lab. We have this laptop here. It's connected to the ground using its power adapter, and it's also connected to the network using this 10-meter Ethernet cable, which then connected to the switch. But also we tapped the shielding at the far end of this cable with our alligator clip, which is then connected to our measurement equipment, which is going to measure the signal. So what is going to happen is that the potential comes up from the ground to the PC, where it becomes correlated with the secret key. This information then travels to a wire and picked up by our alligator clip, then somehow filtered. And inside our measurement equipment, it's measured, and for this we can analyze the signal and extract the key. So once again, this works. This works even if you have the best firewall or if you're transmitting encrypted packets. The important thing is that this cable is present and is connected to the laptop. So that's enough with the chassis potential channel. Now let's talk about some other channels. So instead of waiting for the stray electromagnetic emanation to be dumped to the ground, we can directly pick it up by this improvised antenna. And this antenna is practically a loop of wire wrapped around itself and then connected to this digital TV tuner, which is connected to the laptop, which analyzes the signal and extracts the secret key. But this setup is pretty big, and the range here is quite limited. It's only a few centimeters, and this can be easily detected. So, but it doesn't have to be this way. We can go on and build this small device, which we call portable instrument for trace acquisition. It consists of once again, this antenna and this digital TV tuner, which is controlled by this small Android computer. And then this Android computer records the signals and transmits it back home using Wi-Fi. So this device is pretty small and costs around $300. All the equipment can be easily purchased on eBay. And comfortably enough, this device is small enough. Here it is. So I can fit it inside this common food item, such as this pita bread, and actually grab a bite and place it inside on the laptop and extract the secret keys ID. And luckily enough, the acronyms of this device matches pita. So for some of us who are still students, $300 is quite pricey. So for some computers, we can go on and pick the signal for some computers using this plain simple radio receiver, which I bought at the flea market next to my home. Then we're going to connect this radio receiver to our smartphone, which will record the device's emanation, and then analyze it back home and extract the secret key. So that's for the electromagnetical channel. Now let's talk about the acoustic channel. So the first thing about the acoustic, first question about the acoustic channel is the noise of what are we measuring. So here is the laptop, and although it's pretty modern, it has some mechanical parts inside it. For example, it has this magnetical hard drive, and this CD drive, and this fan, which is part of the CPU's cooling system. And as the system operates, this devices emit some noises. But this is not the noise we're interested in. The noise we're interested in is here. If you look a little bit closer on the motherboard, you will see these capacitors and this coil, which are part of the laptop's voltage regulation system. And as these parts struggle to supply the CPU with steady electricity, these parts emit some noises. And if you look on the internet, this is not new. You will find a lot of people who complain about coil wire, which is sometimes emitted even by capacitor. And there are a lot of people complaining about the new computer which they bought, emitting these high-pitched annoying noises. And what I claim here today is that this noise is not only a nuisance, but can be a security risk. So in order to demonstrate you the acoustic channel, I brought some more equipment with me here today. Here it is on the left side. And once again, it's mirrored on the screen behind me. We have this we have this target laptop, and in front of it we have this microphone. Then the signal is amplified and digitized using this digitizer, which is practically a fancy sound card. And here's our laptop, which is going to analyze the signal and extract the secret key. So the only thing here that needs to be in some proximity to the target computer is this small silver tip, which is the microphone itself. The rest of the equipment here is just in order the signal to travel safely and be digitized correctly in our attacker station. So it can be somehow concealed in the attacker's clothes. So actually the signal of what we're recording. At the previous channels, we measured the movement of electrons and photons. And electrons and photons are small particles, and they move really fast. In case of the acoustic channel, we measure the movement of air molecules. And air molecules are pretty big and moves really slowly. So air cannot convey information at high frequencies, since air molecules doesn't move fast enough. So in practice, this means that if I try to measure acoustical emanation at 400 kilohertz, I will get a range of only a few millimeters and have to place my microphone just in front of the measured component. In case of side channel attacks, this means that I need to disassemble the entire computer and stick the microphone just inside it. So I consider This is impractical since it can be easily detected. And what I consider practical is a bandwidth of 50 kilohertz. And the problem with so little bandwidth is that we cannot observe a single squaring operation. So what we're going to do is, instead of applying leakage self-amplification on bandwidth on the single squaring operation, we're going to apply leakage self-amplification on the entire decryption. And instead of applying leakage self-amplification on single squaring routine and then extracting the secret key with one decryption and one ciphertext, we're going to apply leakage self-amplification on the entire decryption, use the information from the entire decryption, and extract just a single bit of the secret key. Doing this for the entire bits of the secret prime key, I'm going to extract the secret prime key. So for RSA 4096, this means around 248 decryptions, and to do so many decryptions, I need around 1 hour of measurement. So let me demonstrate this channel for you, and hopefully you will write down if you missed the last time. So what we're going to see is once again a spectrogram, and this time, and as you all know now, the leakage of RSA decryption looks like this. It has this first part which corresponds to modulo P, and the second part corresponds to modulo Q. But this time we're going to be interested in the distance between these lines. So if the attack bit is 0, then the distance is going to be small, while if the attack bit is 1, the distance is going to be big. So let's close that. And here is the leakage picked up by this microphone, visualized once again with the spectrogram. And here again, the time axis is the frequency. The time axis is the vertical axis. The frequency axis is the horizontal axis. So if I clap my hands, you can see it immediately on the screen. And if I use this whistle, you can see this line which corresponds to the frequency of this whistle. And now I'm going to ask the computer to run some decryptions for us. So here are the computer decrypting, and you can see immediately this modulo P and modulo Q exponentiation parts, and you can read the secret key out of it. So here is a 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. Let me know when you... You can't write the key down like this. You need to be quiet, please. So let me apologize for the range here. It's quite small. But in the lab, we demonstrated the same key extraction with a range of 1 meter. But sometimes you want a bigger range, so you can go on eBay and buy this plastic parabolic thing. It costs around $40, and then you can place the microphone inside it and get a range of 10 meters. In this photograph, the range is only 4 meters since we couldn't find a large enough classroom. But sometimes you don't want to carry on this your parabolic microphone and this whole suitcase with this measurement equipment. So for some laptops, the leakage is so strong, you can do this by your smartphone. And the microphone in your smartphone is crappy, and we don't have any specs for it. But it's still enough in order to extract the secret key. So let me conclude my talk by talking about some countermeasures. So one commonly suggested countermeasure, at least for the EM channel, is shielding. And more specifically, Faraday cages. So there are a lot of companies who are willing to sell you these desktop enclosures or even these fully shielded laptops. And the problem with these things is that these boxes cost quite a lot of money, and I will not trust a laptop with its own carry handle to be lightweight. So this is the problem, but beside the problem of practicality, the way that this device handles electromagnetic ammunition is by dumping to the ground. So it's obviously not so effective against the ground channel. But not only that, computers need to breathe. In order to breathe, they have these ventilation holes. And we just demonstrated that you can use information carried by the air in order to extract secret keys. So here's the setup we demonstrated in the lab. We have this laptop behind this metal mesh. And while this metal mesh is very effective against EM channel, it's practically acoustic, practically transparent to the acoustic channel. Another common suggestion is to add some analog noise, which will somehow mask the leakage emitted by these devices. But the problem is that different ciphers and different cipher implementations and even different targets emit different noises and different leakage. In some cases, even different targets from the same make and model emit some slightly different leakage. So it's not so clear how to generate such noise, and even if I try to do it, it would cost a lot of money and require a lot of calibration. Another common suggestion is instead of generating some analog noise in hardware, I'm going to write software which will generate noise and run in parallel to the decryption. But this doesn't work, at least without very careful calibration. Since during this talk I demonstrated you leakage and even key extraction on these machines, which run full Windows XP without disabling any of the default tasks. So, and even more, we sometimes demonstrated that this noise-generating software can badly interact with the decryption process and lower the leakage frequency. And lower leakage frequency means for the attacker that he can use cheaper equipment and has a bigger range. So this is somehow depressing. But what can we do? Our attacks rely on the fact that we can somehow force the attacker, the target, to decrypt our carefully chosen ciphertext with these mathematical properties and big structure. And the solution to all these problems is never to allow an attacker to feed input to your sensitive operations. So what we're going to do in case of decryption is instead of decrypting the original ciphertext, we're going to craft a new ciphertext, which is going to be mathematically equivalent to the original one, but will have a random bit pattern. So it will not have the mathematical properties and the bit structure the attacker designed, and we're going to decrypt it. So for RSA, the cost is quite negligible, but for LGAMAL and other discrete log stuff, the cost is quite significant. It can be sometimes 2 times slowdown. But I hope that I convinced you today that if you are not doing this, you are leaving yourself vulnerable to a lot of chosen ciphertext attacks. And if your implementation of RSA doesn't do ciphertext randomization, I have a chosen ciphertext crafted just for you. So if you want to read more about our research, you can find it here. Thank you, and now we'll take questions. Yes?
Could they fix the basic Scrabble routine to leak less information? So by always doing that operation, no matter what the bit is, and then.
Well, you never know if it leaks and on what channel it leaks. The right solution is to do ciphertext randomization, as I said, and this is actually what they're doing now. Yes, please.
So for the adaptive thing, do you have to then send mute emails after every bit?
Yeah. More questions? Yes.
You said that you work together with GnuPG to mitigate these attacks. Did you actually add ciphertext randomization to?
Yes. Yes. Now they're doing ciphertext randomization. You're safe to use GnuPG, at least for this. Against you are safe from these attacks. I'm not sure what can be found out there. More questions? Thank you.